On January 24th, 1982, and again on March 28th, 1982, I had the honor of interviewing and filming two of the great and noble men of the 20th century. These two brothers were loyal and close friends during their long and distinguished time in mortality. And now, Vincent M. Flake and S. Eugene Flake.
Hello, boys and girls. Nice to greet you from the television. I think I'll start out by telling you about a story I heard from Johnny Carson on Tonight's show. He read from a lost and found column in a Midwestern newspaper. Lost dog, brown fur, some missing due to mange, blind in one eye, deaf, lame leg due to recent traffic accident, slightly arthritic, goes by the name Lucky. I understand Uncle Gene's going to come and do a little talking on this. He and I remind me of a little about this story. Three men were driving in a noisy old car to the city of London. And as they approached the city, one of them said, "Is this Wembley?" "No, this is Thursday." "Me too. Let's stop and have a drink." I thought I'd tell you a little bit about a favorite character that I read about in the Old Testament. His name was King Solomon. The account of it's found in 1 Kings. I was impressed in reading that when Solomon became king, he asked the Lord that he would give him understanding, give him wisdom. And the Lord was very pleased with him because he didn't ask for long life, or he didn't ask for riches, but because he had a great responsibility and was the head of a innumerable group of people that his father had left him the throne to take care of. He knew that he had a great responsibility. One of the stories that impressed me was shortly after he became king, two women came to him with one child, and they said that they had given birth to two children near the same time at the same location, and there wasn't anyone else there. And in the night, one of the women's child died, and she took the dead baby and put it by the other mother, took the live child and put it by her. And these two women went before Solomon with the complaint, and they both claimed the child, the live child. And the mother of the child told it to Solomon. He says, "This isn't my baby." He says, "I woke up and found that my baby was gone and a dead baby was put by me." And the other woman says, "No, that's my child." And Solomon, in the wisdom that the Lord had granted him, he says, "All right, bring me a sharp sword." He said, "I'll cut the child in two and I'll give each woman a half." The mother of the live child says, "Oh no, don't kill the babe. I'd rather you'd give him to the other woman." The other woman was content with, "Well, I'll go ahead, execute the baby." So Solomon says, "Give the baby to the woman who had the compassion on the babe and wanted to keep him alive." Just one of the stories from the Bible that's very interesting. I thought, while Uncle Gene's here, I'd like to tell some of the kids about a little that I understand about our great-grandfather, James Madison Flake. If you want to correct me on any of this, I'll just go ahead with a little narrative. And James Madison Flake, number one, was born clear back in 1815, in June the 22nd. That happens to be just 100 years and 1 month before my birth. For some reason or another, I was given one of his names. But he left the land of his birth in North Carolina and moved to Mississippi, which was still in the same territory, but it was clear over close to the Mississippi River. And some of the rest of the family, one of his brothers, moved over near him. Soon after they moved, he took with him a large team of white mules and a team of oxen. And he found a very favorable location over there, and he had some slaves that were given to him by his people. And for about 3 short years, they built up a real nice place there. They had a chance to make a real plantation. And with the help of these slaves, why, they started clearing land and get things in good order. But because of a singular thing that took place, he didn't stay there very long. It seems that one of the converts of early church history came there as a missionary named Elder Clapp. And at first, James M. Flake and his wife didn't pay a lot of attention to the strange story of the restored gospel, but it began to take root, and after a few weeks they applied for baptism into the church. There was only 2 or 3 other families in the locality that joined the church, but none of the rest of the Flakes, none of his relatives. And he was ostracized, disowned, rejected by his own people because of his announced belief in this strange new gospel, which wasn't a new gospel, but it was reputed to be the restored gospel in its original form. Well, he left his homeland and rode a mule clear up to Nauvoo. To investigate this thing that he had joined, this new church. Just 15 days before the death of the prophet's brother, along with the prophet, he was given a patriarchal blessing by Hiram, the patriarch of the church. And he went back and moved his family up there to Nauvoo, and he was there for a lot of the mobbings, terrible things that were going on. And they left there, across the Mississippi in February of 1846, and went to a place in Nebraska called Winter Quarters with a group of the saints that were also homeless. They spent an entire winter there in a dugout. There, 3 of the family, little boys, died, were buried. He had 3 of his slaves with him, 2 women and 1 man. and one of them decided she wanted to go back to her own people back in Mississippi. He didn't have to give in to her. She was his slave. But he did. He took her clear back there, gave her freedom, and let her go where she wanted to. But on that trip, he got a hold of some more Missouri or Mississippi mules that aided a lot in getting a company of people to the west. He stayed there after the first company went to Utah, but he sent his slave, Green, and this team of white mules and a large wheeled mountain buggy. And it may be interesting to note right here that I've seen that buggy. It's in a museum now in Salt Lake City. The museum, the Relief Society has got together up near the Capitol building. And it's reported to have been found in St. John's, Arizona. There's a sign on it that says that it's reported also that it was in that wagon that Brigham Young first viewed the valley. Church history records that it was in Wilford Woodruff's buggy. And then it goes on to say that this buggy at one time belonged to some of the early Flake family. Well, he gave this Negro instructions to build him a house and stay there in Utah until they came, but to send the mules and the wagon back for them was somebody else that was coming back. And when they got to Utah, the year 1848, they found that Nigger Green had been true to his assignment. He'd built him a log house in a little community south of Salt Lake called Cottonwood. When they got there, he didn't stay there very long, and from bits of information that is collected by the Relief Society, Sister Kate Carter tells about a diary that was kept by Brother Bigler, in which Uncle John Smith, uncle to the prophet, came to him and told him that Brigham Young had told him that because he had been cuffed and kicked around so much and was old and was penniless and had given his all for the church, that it was time that he had a little bit of this world's goods, and for him to get a hold of some young fellow that could go to California and get him some gold. And also it was said that E.T. Benson, who I think was the grandfather of President Ezra Taft Benson, also requested somebody to go and represent him in the gold fields for a gold mission. The story that the Flakes have always had is that James Madison Flake was sent on an exploration mission to find a place to settle the saints. Well, that may have had something to do with it too, but the man in charge of that group was Elder Rich. And Amasa M. Lyman was also on that expedition. Well, according to these diaries, there was accounts of gold digging near the Mother Lode in California, and told how much money each man was digging out in a day, and what they did with it. At one time it said that Brother Flake emptied his entire pouch and gave it to Brother Rich as tithing. It was on this same place near Mariposa that this Brother Bigler says that one of the saddest things that happened to them on the trip was the accident that took the life of Brother Flake. It seemed that someone in the party was riding a bad horse. He had a very poor cinch on his saddle. And because Brother Flake was riding a tame mule, he took his own cinch and gave it to this fellow and just tied a rope under his saddle. And his mule shied on the trail and the saddle turned and broke his neck. They buried him somewhere there in an unmarked grave. It's quite a thought when you think that he was only permitted to live about 35 years, and only 6 of those years he was in the church. But in that short time he gave all of his time, all of his means, and finally even his life. Do you know any more about that story?
Oh, I think you've covered it quite completely. I'm just wondering if you can stop in the middle of your performance and turn off your outfit till we get an understanding of what we're supposed to do. I didn't realize it was going in for something like this. I didn't know the nature of the story that he wanted, whether he wants humor, whether he wants history of our town or of our people or anything else.
Well, let's just take over here and do what you want to do.
Vincent, I just wondered how much older I am than you are. I come in 22 years late for Snowflake.
Was that so?
Folks had been here for 22 years when I arrived.
Yeah, it was about 35 before I showed up.
Well, they did pretty well in building. Now, I thought as I went meeting this morning, as I went by the old Stinson building there, that's the only building there was in this valley when our people came. And it was a new building, new adobe building, just constructed the year before. And Jim Stinson told grandfather, he said that during that winter, and it was a cold winter, our people knew that because they were on their way from Utah.
Yeah.
They got as far as the Black Falls where my brother Will was born, my oldest brother. And that was on the 11th of January. But Mr. Stinson telling about this valley, he said that for 30 days the snow did not thaw on the south side of that building. Folks could well understand that because they had endured the same winter on the
way down here.
On the way down here on the Colorado River. Well, the blocks of the town were measured off, and the streets and so on, and a house on almost each corner of the block. That'd make 4 houses to the block, to the 4-acre block. That'd make an acre to the home. And these blocks under the hill were pretty well filled in my first memory of the country. That is, being a house on each corner in the block below the hill. people settled on this side of the hill because the High Line ditch came just under the hill, and they all wanted a garden spot. There's only one or two places above the ditch, as I recall, my first memory of the community. And the old-timers that lived here had their own individuality. I've understood people who knew them well to say that it was the biggest cross-section of humanity they ever had known in taking into account the individuality of each person. He was himself. He didn't copy a neighbor. He was himself. And there were some colorful characters among us. All of them good men and good women. Wonderful people.
Was the Lola B house up there on the hill?
No. That was long before she ever thought about it.
Oh, is that right?
There. Yeah.
That was an outpost when I first remember.
Yes. Well, I can tell you just a little story about that. After the folks were building fences out here on the range, they'd put up a white cloth on a tree to sight to. And in grandfather's pasture west of the knoll, somebody had put a white flag up in the tree, and we were riding along there one day, and grandfather looked up and saw this white flag, and he thought he was looking at an object as much as 5 or 6 miles away. He says, "Well, there's Lily B's house yonder on the hill."
Yeah. Now, talking about grandfather and on the range, you recall the story down in the old 7 Mile Corral when grandfather was watching the branding going on, and he says, all at once he brightened up and saw a freckle-faced cow. "Jimmy," he says to father, "yonder's old chicken. Recollect old chicken?" Ralph Ramsey, a neighbor here, was out helping with the branding, and he always had some quirk to come in with, and he says, "Hey, Granddad, recollect the duck?"
I was there that day. That was an interesting thing, too. Grandfather'd sit on his box watching the brand, and you'd think that he wasn't paying any attention to what was going on. Well, we agreed that before we went out that day that some of those purebred calves, we'd make a selection among them. We wouldn't save them all for bulls. And grandfather hadn't got in on that conversation, but he saw the first operation there, and he hollered, "Jimmy, Jimmy, look at yonder." Whacking it to him.
Not a mistake was being made.
Yeah.
It was Bruce, I guess, that grandfather was watching him trying to